There are three things I never talk about. The night in Colorado Springs that changed everything. The child I raised alone in a two-bedroom apartment in Hartford, Connecticut, on cold coffee and sheer stubbornness. And the three men whose scent still lives in the back of my throat like smoke from a fire I never put out. 6 years of silence. 6 years of fine. And then my son looked up at me this morning with those impossible silver eyes. Eyes I have never seen on another human being except three, and said, "Daddy, I found them." I dropped my coffee mug. It shattered on the kitchen tile, and somewhere deep in my chest, so did I. My name is Elliot Voss, and I am, objectively, doing great. I have a job I love, junior archivist at the Hartford Public Library. Which sounds boring until you realize I spend my days touching 100-year-old letters and seeing the exact moment someone wrote them. That is my thing, by the way. My embarrassing, inconvenient, occasionally life-saving thing, psychometry. I touch an object and its history bleeds into me like ink through paper. Emotions, images, voices, truth. It sounds cool. Mostly it just means I cannot shake anyone's hand without knowing more about them than I ever wanted to. I also have a 5-year-old son named Jasper who is, without question, the funniest and most chaotic person I have ever met. He once reorganized my entire bookshelf by vibe. He told our neighbor's dog it was giving main character energy. He is 5. He is terrifying. I love him so much it physically hurts. And until this morning, my life was contained, manageable. Wanted carefully, deliberately small. I had built small on purpose. Small meant safe. Small meant the Triplet alpha kings of the Caldwell pack could not find me, could not look at Jasper, could not reach through the careful walls I had assembled around us with both hands and a lot of therapy. Small was working just fine. And then Jasper handed me a printed web page, because apparently my 5-year-old knows how to use the library computer, a conversation we will be having later. And on that web page were three faces I have spent 6 years trying to forget. Caldwell Alpha Triad announces public pack charity event, Hartford Civic Center, this Saturday. Hartford. They were in Hartford. I looked them up, Jasper said proudly, climbing onto the kitchen counter with zero permission. Because Ms. Renee at school said I have silver eyes and nobody else has silver eyes and I wanted to know where I got them from. And then I found them. They have silver eyes too, Daddy, all three of them. He showed me the photo like he was presenting a science project. Three men, broad-shouldered, devastatingly composed, dressed in suits that cost more than my monthly rent. Callum Caldwell on the left, the oldest, the coldest, the one who had looked at me 6 years ago like I was a problem he was already calculating how to solve. Declan Caldwell in the center, the one with the slightly crooked smile and the laugh that had made me forget, for one reckless night, every sensible thing I had ever believed about myself. And Reed Caldwell on the right, the quietest of the three, the one whose silence had always felt less like distance and more like a hand pressed gently over a wound. I had not looked at their faces in 6 years. My power flickered without permission, a static pulse behind my eyes the way it always did when my emotions spiked. The kind of involuntary surge that, on bad days, meant nearby objects vibrated faintly or the light stuttered. I gripped the counter's edge and breathed through it. Not now. Absolutely not now. They're doing a charity thing, Jasper continued helpfully, for kids. I think we should go. We are not going. But Daddy, Jasper Elijah Voss, we are not going. He gave me the look with the silver eyes and the slightly tilted head that made him look so much like Declan that my chest did something complicated and awful. God, you always say family is important. I do say that. So? That is not the gotcha you think it is, baby. He hopped off the counter, entirely unbothered, and grabbed his backpack. I'm just saying, they look nice. Noted. And sad. I paused. What? He shrugged, small shoulders lifting. In the picture. They look sad, like they lost something. He looked up at me, utterly matter-of-fact. Maybe they lost us. He walked out the front door to wait for the school bus, leaving me standing in a kitchen full of broken ceramic and 6 years of carefully managed grief, cracking open at the seams. My hands were still shaking when I swept up the mug. I told myself it was the shock. The cold morning air coming through the window I had left cracked overnight. The coffee I had not finished. I told myself a lot of things. She was standing there on the kitchen tile, Like they would never find us. Like one night meant nothing to three alpha kings who had more omegas orbiting them than I could count. Like Jasper was mine, just mine, and I had made the right choice walking away from Colorado Springs with nothing but a duffel bag and a secret I had promised myself I would carry alone. I picked up the largest shard of the mug and held it in my bare palm. The image hit me immediately. Jasper at the library computer yesterday afternoon. Small face focused and serious, typing slowly with two fingers. Caldwell Triplet Alpha's silver eyes. He had been planning this. My 5-year-old had been planning this. I set the shard down carefully. Somewhere across Hartford, 3 Alpha Kings were preparing for a charity event. And my son, and with his silver eyes and his terrifying brain and his complete inability to leave anything alone, had just pulled the pin on 6 years of silence. God help us all indeed. I stood in that kitchen for a full 2 minutes doing absolutely nothing productive. Just breathing. Just staring at the spot where my coffee mug used to exist as a whole, functioning object before my life decided to detonate before 8 a.m. Then my phone buzzed. My best friend Marcus, right on schedule, because the universe has a cruel sense of timing. Marcus, good morning, bestie, how are we? Me, fine. Marcus, that was fast. What happened? I stared at the screen. Marcus Del Rey had known me since freshman orientation at UConn, had held my hand through 2 panic attacks and 1 very ill-advised situationship, and had been the only person on earth outside of my therapist who knew the full truth about Colorado Springs. He could read my fine the way I read old letters. Instantly and completely. Me. Jasper found them. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Marcus. I'm coming over. Me. You have work. Marcus. Elliot Nathaniel Voss, I will call in dead. I almost smiled. Almost. Me. I have work too. I'm okay. I just need to think. Marcus. You are not okay, and thinking alone is how you make bad decisions. Remember the bangs incident of 2021. I put my phone face down on the counter. He was not wrong about the bangs. But I genuinely could not have this conversation right now, because if I started talking about it out loud, it would become real. And I needed it to stay theoretical for approximately 40 more minutes while I got myself to the library and lost myself in other people's histories for a while. That was the plan. The plan lasted until I walked through the library side entrance, unwrapped my scarf, and touched the door handle. The vision slammed into me without warning. It was fast, disjointed, the way fresh impressions always were. A large hand gripping the same door handle. Expensive fabric. The sharp, clean scent of pine and cedar and something darker underneath. Something that made my hindbrain go absolutely haywire before I could stop it. An emotion bleeding off the metal so strongly it nearly buckled my knees. Not anger, not arrogance. Searching. Whoever had touched this door recently was looking for something. Desperately, quietly. With the kind of controlled urgency that only people trained to never show desperation ever managed. I yanked my hand back, pressed it against my coat, told my heart to stop doing what it was doing immediately. It did not listen. I pushed inside with my shoulder like a normal person who had not just psychically ambushed themselves before 9 in the morning and went straight to the archive room, which was my sanctuary, my safe zone, the one place in Hartford where nobody expected anything from me except careful hands and good cataloging instincts. My coworker Diana was already at her desk, reading glasses perched on her nose, looking deeply unbothered by everything, which I respected immensely. You look terrible, she said without looking up. Thank you. I'm Diana. Did you eat breakfast? I had coffee. That's not breakfast. It was a big coffee. She finally looked up, studied my face for exactly 3 seconds, with the accuracy of a woman who had raised 4 children and tolerated zero nonsense, and reached into her desk drawer. She produced a granola bar and placed it on my side of the table without comment. I took it. Thank you. The 3 men who came in this morning asked about the local archive collections, she said, turning a page, specifically the Caldwell family historical records. I told them we had the 1940s land grant documents in the restricted section. They were very polite. I stopped unwrapping the granola bar. 3 men, I said. Well-dressed. Came in around 8:15. She tilted her head slightly. Silver eyes, all 3 of them. Unusual. Very striking. The granola bar crinkled loudly in my grip. Diana glanced at my hands, then at my face. Something shifted behind her expression, but she was far too professional to say whatever she was thinking, which was another reason I valued her deeply. They left a card, she added, in case we could arrange access to the restricted records. I left it on the request desk. I did not move for a moment. Then I walked to the request desk with the energy of someone approaching a live wire, which was essentially accurate. The business card was crisp, cream-colored, embossed lettering, the kind of card that announced money without having to say a single word about it. Caldwell Group Holdings, Callum, Declan, and Reed Caldwell. And below that, in Declan's handwriting, I knew his handwriting because my power was inconvenient and my memory was worse, a single added line in pen. We're looking for someone. If you know an Elliot Voss, please have him call us. I picked up the card. The vision hit me like warm water. Declan's fingers pressing down on the pen. The specific texture of his emotion soaking into the cardstock like something that had been held too long and too tightly. Not anger. Not the cold entitlement I had spent 6 years bracing against. Just ache. Raw, unguarded, exhausted ache. 6 years, it said, without saying anything at all. We have been looking for 6 years. I set the card down, stepped back, pressed my palms flat against my thighs and stared at the ceiling, and had a very quiet, very private crisis for about 15 seconds. Then I straightened up, tucked the card into my coat pocket, and went back to my desk. Diana said nothing. I said nothing. Outside, somewhere in Hartford, 3 Alpha Kings were one building away from the answer they had apparently spent 6 years trying to find, and I was sitting here eating a granola bar like a man who still had options. Jasper, I thought, I am going to get you the most educational, least fun birthday present I can find. I spent approximately 4 minutes mentally browsing options. A microscope kit, encyclopedia volumes, one of those How Things Work books that came with 0 toys and maximum disappointment. Something that said, I love you and also you need to understand that actions have consequences, Jasper Elijah. Then my phone buzzed on the desk. Unknown number. Connecticut area code. I stared at it. Yana buzzed again. Diana turned a page. I picked up because I have the self-preservation instincts of a golden retriever, apparently. Hello. Silence. Then breathing. Then a voice I had spent 6 years successfully not thinking about said quietly and carefully, Elliot. Just my name. One word. Declan Caldwell said my name like he had been rehearsing it, and it still came out wrong. Like the word had edges he had not expected. My entire nervous system staged a coup. Wrong number, I said. Elliot. I don't know who this is. You picked up on the second ring. I pick up for telemarketers too. I have a problem with conflict avoidance. A breath, almost a laugh. Not quite. Can we talk? I looked at the ceiling. The ceiling had nothing useful to offer. How did you get this number? We've had it for 2 years, he said. Anna, we just didn't know if we had the right to use it. That landed somewhere uncomfortable. I shifted in my chair and lowered my voice because Diana was absolutely listening while pretending to read, which was her right as a person who had given me a granola bar. What do you want, Declan? To see you. Pass. Elliot? Hard pass. Respectful but firm pass. The kind of pass that comes with eye contact and a handshake. Another breath, longer this time. We know about the child. The archive room went very, very quiet. Not actually. Diana was still turning pages. The ventilation system was still humming. Hartford was still happening outside the window. But inside my skull, everything just stopped and sat down on the floor. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. My voice came out remarkably steady. Yes, which honestly impressed me. His name is Jasper. A pause. He used the library computer yesterday to look us up. The search came from a library card registered to your address, Elliot. Of course. Of course, my 5-year-old criminal mastermind had used his own library card. His own. Registered library card, which I had set up for him because I wanted to encourage a love of learning and literacy, and this was my punishment. He's mine, I said. Quietly, clearly. No room for interpretation. I know. He is mine, Declan. I know that too. His voice did not rise, did not sharpen. It stayed careful and low, and that somehow made it worse. I'm not calling to take anything from you. I just need you to know that we know, and we would like to meet him if you'll allow it. Allow it, I almost laughed. P, that's a very polite way to open a conversation that you could have started 6 years ago. Silence. You left, he said finally. You gave me every reason to. More silence. The heavy kind, full of things neither of us was saying, which was fine because I was at work and I was not about to unpack 6 years of complicated history in the archive room, while Diana pretended to read the same page she had been on for 8 minutes. Saturday, he said, the charity event at the Civic Center. Just come. Bring him if you want. Don't bring him if you don't. But come, Elliot. 20 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I'll think about it. That means no. It means I'll think about it. I'm an adult, Declan. I'm allowed to think about things. You think about things until the option expires. You always did. I opened my mouth, closed it. Because that was irritatingly accurate, and I refused to validate it. Goodbye. I hung up, sat very still for a moment. Then I put my phone in my desk drawer, face down, and pulled the next catalog request toward me like a person who was absolutely fine. Old friend? Diana asked. Something like that. She turned a page. The tall one with the quiet eyes left his jacket on the chair by the door, in case you were wondering. I looked up. Which one is the quiet one? She smiled at her book. The one who came back in after the other two left. Stood at the door for a moment, looking at the archive room, then left the jacket and walked out. She paused. Deliberately, I think. The leaving of the jacket. Read. Of course it was Reed. I pushed back from my desk before I could talk myself out of it. Ick walked to the front of the library, and there it was on the chair by the entrance. A jacket. Dark charcoal wool, expensive, folded with the kind of neatness that was either military habit or compulsive control. I should have left it there. I picked it up. The vision came slow this time, unhurried. Reed's hands smoothing the jacket onto the chair, the deliberateness of it exactly the way Diana described. His emotion was different from Declan's. Where Declan's ache was raw and vocal even in silence, Reed's was still, layered. Like something that had been folded and refolded so many times, the creases had become permanent. But underneath the stillness was one thing, clean and sharp as a pin. I just want to know if he's okay. Not I want him back. Not I want what's mine. Just that. Just the wanting to know if I was okay. If Jasper was okay. Something so basic and human it punched straight through every wall I had spent 6 years constructing with such tremendous personal effort. I folded the jacket over my arm, stood there by the library entrance with Hartford going about its morning outside the glass doors, and I felt something I had not let myself feel in a very long time. Not love, I was not ready to call it that, but the memory of it, the shape it used to occupy, the specific warmth of 3 people who had, for one night in Colorado Springs, made me feel like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And then morning came, and I saw what I saw, and I walked away. That part I had never told anyone. Not Marcus, not my therapist. Not the journal I kept for 8 months before I stopped, because writing it down made it too real. Ari, what I saw that morning, what my power showed me when I touched Callum Caldwell's phone. My chest tightened the way it always did when I got close to that particular memory, like my own body had agreed to keep the secret and enforce the agreement physically. I walked back to my desk, set the jacket on the corner of it, told myself I was holding it for lost and found purposes. Diana did not say a single word. She did not have to say anything because the jacket said everything. I cataloged 3 requests, misfiled 1, caught the misfiling, fixed it, and spent 20 minutes pretending to update the digital archive index while actually staring at the same entry. Caldwell Family Land Grant, 1943, Connecticut River Valley. Was the irony of the Caldwell name sitting in my archive database like it had always lived there was not lost on me. Nothing about this morning was lost on me. I was finding everything whether I wanted to or not. My power hummed under my skin the way it did when I was emotionally activated and trying to suppress it. A low, persistent static, like a radio searching for a signal. Twice I reached for a catalog folder and caught flickers off the paper. Someone anxious had handled it recently. Someone who needed the bathroom but kept working anyway. Completely useless information that my brain collected like a raccoon with a coin. I pressed my fingertips together under the desk and breathed. The library opened to the public at 10. By 10:15, the reading room had its usual Thursday crowd. Retired men with newspapers. Turn a college student who came every week and always fell asleep within 40 minutes. Two homeschool kids whose parents sat in the corner looking quietly overwhelmed. Normal, safe, small. I was doing fine. And then the door opened and Hartford's entire weather system apparently decided to walk inside in the shape of Callum Caldwell. I felt him before I saw him. That was the honest and deeply inconvenient truth. A shift in the air pressure of the room, the way a space reorganizes itself around someone who has spent their entire life being the most significant person in it. My hindbrain, which had absolutely no loyalty to me whatsoever, sent up a flare so fast I nearly knocked my water bottle off the desk. I looked up. He was standing at the reference desk talking to the volunteer on duty, and he had not seen me yet. That gave me approximately 8 seconds to compose myself, which I used wisely by doing absolutely nothing except cataloging the specific wrongness of how good he looked in a dark navy coat, with his silver eyes scanning the room with the quiet authority of a man who had never once in his life wondered if he was allowed to be somewhere. Callum Caldwell. Oldest of the three. The one who spoke least and meant most. The one who had looked at me across a crowded pack event 6 years ago like he was solving a geometry problem, and I was the answer he had not been expecting. The one whose phone I had touched the morning after. The one whose phone had shown me something that still lived in my chest like a splinter I had never been able to reach. He turned. Our eyes met across the reading room. Neither of us moved. And the college student snored softly in the corner. One of the homeschool kids dropped a pencil. The ventilation hummed. Callum walked toward me with the energy of a man who had been preparing for this specific moment and had decided the preparation was finished. I stood up, because I was not having this conversation at a seated disadvantage. I had 5'9" of height and 6 years of personal growth, and I intended to use both. He stopped on the other side of the desk, close enough that I caught his scent and immediately wished I had not. Pine and cedar and that darker undertone I had read off the door handle this morning, and underneath all of it, something warmer that my power did not need to translate, because my body already knew it. Some already recognized it the way you recognize a song you have not heard in years, and somehow still know every word. Elliot, he said. His voice was exactly the same, low and even and entirely too composed for a man who had just walked into my workplace uninvited. We're a public library, I said, but I'm going to need you to have a reason to be here that involves books. Something moved behind his eyes. Not quite amusement, not quite pain. Something in between that had no clean name. We need to talk. Your brother already called me this morning. I know, Declan handles things with words. I handle them in person. He paused. I've been standing outside for 40 minutes, deciding if this was appropriate. That surprised me enough that I almost forgot to maintain my expression. Suna, 40 minutes. I didn't want to ambush you. And yet, he agreed quietly. He did not look away. Callum never looked away. It was one of the things that had undone me 6 years ago. That absolute steadiness, the sense that he was looking at you and actually seeing you and filing what he saw somewhere permanent. I owe you an explanation. My chest did something complicated. For which part? All of it. I looked at him for a long moment. The reading room went about its business around us, completely indifferent to the fact that my carefully constructed small life was actively being dismantled on a Thursday morning. Not here, I said finally. He nodded once, immediate, like he had been ready to accept whatever terms I offered. I told Diana I was taking my break. She told me to take a snack. I grabbed my coat and Reed's jacket, which I was still holding for entirely professional lost and found reasons, and I led Callum out through the side entrance to the small courtyard behind the building where staff ate lunch when the weather was tolerable. The November air was cold and sharp and smelled like wet leaves in city. I sat on the bench. He remained standing, which I respected because it was actually the less powerful position in this particular configuration, and I think he knew it. Talk, I said. He was quiet for a moment. Callum organized his words the way I organized the archive, carefully, with full awareness of what belonged where. The morning you left, he started. I know what I saw, Callum. You saw the message. I saw the message. He exhaled slowly. It wasn't what you read it as. I laughed, short and humorless. It said, and I quote from memory because apparently that is a thing I do, the omega is temporary. Handle it before the bonding window closes. Sent to your phone. Your name at the top of the screen. I tilted my head. I'm a pretty good reader, Callum. Archivists usually are. His jaw tightened, just slightly. That message was from our pack attorney, about a different Omega, a formal arrangement our father had negotiated without our knowledge or consent. He looked at me directly. We didn't know about it until that morning. We were trying to shut it down. The courtyard was quiet except for a pigeon doing something ambitious with a chip wrapper near the gate. I said nothing, because here was the problem with being me. Here was the specific curse of psychometry that no self-help book had ever adequately addressed. I could feel the truth in objects, but I had not touched Callum when he said this. I had not touched anything he had recently held. I was sitting in a cold courtyard with nothing but his words and my own history and 6 years of a decision I had made in a panicked, 23-year-old heartbeat. I want to believe that, I said carefully. I know. Wanting to believe something and having a reason to believe it are different things. He reached into his coat pocket, produced his phone, unlocked it, and held it out across the space between us, screen facing me, with the quiet deliberateness of someone making themselves completely vulnerable and choosing to do it anyway. Read it, he said, all of it. Use whatever it is you do. And I know about your ability, Elliot. I've known since Colorado Springs. He held the phone steady. Read the whole thread. I stared at the phone. Then I looked at him. You're asking me to trust what I feel off your phone over what I felt 6 years ago. I'm asking you to feel the whole truth this time, not just one piece of it. The pigeon succeeded with the chip wrapper and flew away looking very pleased with itself. I reached out and took the phone. The vision did not wait for permission. It never did. It hit me in layers the way deep impressions always did. Not a single clean image, but a sequence, overlapping and emotional, like flipping through a stack of photographs where every single one hurt in a different way. Callum's fingers on this phone at 2 a.m, 6 years ago. The specific quality of his panic, which was not loud panic, not the kind that shouted or shook. Callum's panic was the kind that went absolutely still and cold and surgical, which was somehow worse. His thumb scrolling up through a message thread with a contact saved as Hargrove Legal, reading something that had clearly blindsided him, and then immediately typing back with the focused anger of a man who had just discovered his father had been moving pieces on a board without telling anyone. I made myself slow down, made myself read. The thread went back 3 weeks before Colorado Springs. Their father, Raymond Caldwell, had contracted a formal bonding arrangement with another Pax Omega through the family attorney. The message I had seen that morning, the one that had broken something in me so completely I had packed a bag and walked out. It was Hargrove telling Callum the arrangement had a closing window. Handle it before the bonding window closes meant terminate the contract, cancel the arrangement, get it done before PAC law made it binding. It had nothing to do with me. The message I had read as a verdict about my worth was actually the tail end of a fight to get out of an obligation none of the 3 brothers had agreed to. I sat with that for a moment, sat with the specific feeling of 6 years of certainty quietly rearranging itself around a truth I had not had access to. The vision kept moving. I did not stop it. Callum after I left. Standing in the doorway of the hotel room in Colorado Springs, and the quality of that emotion was something I was not prepared for. Not anger, not even hurt exactly, just a blankness. The kind that comes after something registers as loss before the brain has finished processing what was lost. He had stood there for a long time, long enough that the impression of it had soaked deep into the phone's surface like a stain. Then Declan, months later, sitting somewhere with the same phone, typing my name into a search, finding my library profile, finding my address, sitting with that information for a long time before putting the phone down without using it. We just didn't know if we had the right. That was what Declan had said on the phone this morning. I had filed it away as a line, a polished thing someone said, but here it was in the metal and glass of Callum's phone, confirmed and raw and real. They had known where I was for 2 years and had not come, had not called. I had sat on the information with the restraint of men who genuinely believed they had forfeited their right to reach. And then the last impression. Recent. This morning, maybe an hour before Callum walked into my library. Reed's hands on the phone briefly, passing it back. The single emotion that came off that contact was so clean and direct it almost made me flinch. He deserved better than what we gave him. If he says no, we accept it. I pulled my hand back, sat very still on the cold bench in the November courtyard, and looked at the pigeons and the wet leaves and the gray Hartford sky and gave myself exactly 10 seconds to feel everything I was feeling without acting on any of it. Then I turned and looked at Callum, who had been standing this entire time with his hands in his coat pockets, watching me with that steady silver gaze that gave nothing away and somehow gave everything away simultaneously. "Your father set up the arrangement without telling you," I said. "Yes." "And the message I saw was you trying to cancel it." "Yes." "And you have known where I was for 2 years." A pause. "Yes." I nodded slowly. "Okay." He blinked, just slightly, like okay was not the response he had prepared for. "Okay. I'm not saying I forgive 6 years of silence over a 10-minute conversation in a courtyard, Callum. I want to be very clear about that." I handed his phone back. "But I believe you. About the message." I held his gaze. "That's not nothing, but it's also not everything." Something shifted in his expression. Not relief exactly. More like a man who had been holding his breath for a very long time and finally allowed himself to exhale just slightly. "I understand. There's still something you're not telling me," I said. His expression steadied. Too quickly. There it was. I did not need to touch anything to see it. Callum Caldwell had a tell. It was almost invisible. The smallest tightening at the corner of his jaw, a fraction of a second where his eyes went just slightly inward before returning to steady. I had cataloged it 6 years ago without meaning to, and apparently my brain had kept it in permanent storage right next to the lyrics to every song from my childhood and useless historical trivia. "What aren't you telling me?" I asked. The courtyard was quiet. "It's not my secret to tell," he said finally. "It belongs to all three of us equally. And we'd like to tell you together." He paused. "Saturday, the Civic Center. Come, Elliot, not for us, for whatever chance exists that this doesn't have to stay broken." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I picked up Reed's jacket from the bench beside me, stood up, and held it out. "Your brother left this in my library." Callum looked at the jacket, then at me. "He said you'd touch it." He was right. Did it help? I thought about Reed's clean, quiet emotion. "I just want to know if he's okay." "Yeah," I said honestly. "It helped." Callum took the jacket, and for the first time since he had walked into my library, something in his face went soft. Just briefly. Just enough. "Saturday," he said. I did not say yes, but I did not say no, and we both knew exactly what that meant. I went back inside, sat at my desk, and proceeded to have the most productive afternoon of my entire archival career. Not because I was focused, because I was actively using work as a psychological pressure valve, and it was either catalog requests or walk into the Hartford River, and the river was cold this time of year. Diana brought me tea at 2 o'clock without being asked. I accepted it without comment. We understood each other. By 3:15, I had processed 11 requests, reorganized the 1960s municipal records by date instead of subject, which was objectively how they should have always been organized, and written a strongly worded internal memo to myself about the dangers of accepting phone calls from unknown numbers before finishing breakfast. My phone had 7 texts from Marcus. To Marcus, "Okay, you said you were fine, but you have the 'I'm fine' energy of a man standing in a burning building." Marcus, "Elliot." Marcus, "Elliot." Marcus, "I called Diana." Marcus, "She said," and I quote, "he's reorganizing things that don't need reorganizing." Marcus, "That's your tell, babe." Marcus, "Call me when you're done catastrophizing professionally." I called him at 3:30 from the courtyard, standing in the same spot where Callum had handed me his phone, because apparently I enjoyed emotional continuity. "Talk," Marcus said by way of greeting. I talked. All of it. The card on the request desk, Declan's phone call, Reed's jacket and what I had felt inside it, Callum in the reading room, steady and uninvited and looking like 6 years had only sharpened everything about him. The phone vision, the message I had misread, and the secret they were still holding. Saturday. Marcus was quiet for a long moment after I finished. "Okay," he said. "That's my word. Get your own." "Elliot, they've been looking for you for 6 years. They had my address for 2 of those years and didn't use it. Because they thought you didn't want them to, which, to be fair, you didn't." I opened my mouth, closed it. "Whose side are you on?" "Yours. which is why I'm telling you to go Saturday. A pause. And bring Jasper. I am not bringing my child to meet three alpha kings at a public event like some kind of emotional ambush. You mean the three alpha kings who are also his fathers? Marcus, I'm just using accurate language. I will block your number. No, you won't. I'm your emergency contact. He softened slightly. Look, I know what you're afraid of. You're afraid of touching one of them and feeling something real and not being able to put it back in the box. You're afraid Jasper will look at them and love them immediately because Jasper loves everyone immediately. You're afraid that the life you built, the small, careful life, will turn out to have been the consolation prize and not the actual story. The courtyard was very quiet. That was unnecessarily accurate, I said. I know you. A beat. Go Saturday. You don't have to decide anything. You don't have to forgive anything. Just go and let it be what it is. I looked at the gray sky over Hartford. A bird crossed it, small and direct, heading somewhere with complete confidence. I'll think about it, I said. That means yes. You told me that yourself, like 3 years ago. I hung up on him with great dignity. Saturday came the way inevitable things always do, quietly, while I was busy pretending it was not coming. Jasper wore his best sweater, the dark green one with the small collar that made him look like a tiny professor. He had combed his own hair, which meant it was almost right, and he was vibrating at a frequency I typically associated with Christmas morning and the first day of a new school year. We're just going to a community event, I told him, adjusting his collar in the apartment doorway. It is a normal public event that we are attending as members of the public. Uh-huh, Jasper said, in the tone of someone who had already decided how this story ended. Nothing is going to be a big deal. Okay, Daddy. We are going to stay for 1 hour. Sure? I looked at him. When he looked back at me with his silver eyes and his inherited cheekbones, and his complete refusal to pretend he did not know exactly what was happening. He was 5. It was genuinely unfair. Let's go, I said. The Hartford Civic Center was warm and crowded and decorated in the kind of tasteful, understated way that announced serious money without appearing to try. Long tables with white cloths, children running between the legs of standing adults, a string quartet in the corner playing something that floated pleasantly over the noise without demanding attention. I felt them before I saw them, that pressure shift, that reorganization of air. Then Jasper's hand tightened in mine, and he went very still, which for Jasper was the emotional equivalent of a 5-alarm alert, and I followed his gaze across the room. Reed saw us first, and he was standing near the far wall, mid-conversation with someone in a gray suit, and then he was not in that conversation anymore. He had gone completely still in the way I remembered, that absolute quiet stillness, like the world had paused and he was deciding whether to let it resume. His eyes went to Jasper, and something in his face did a thing that I was not prepared for and could not have prepared for, regardless of how much warning I had been given. Not shock, not the calculation I might have expected from men who ran one of the largest pack holdings on the East Coast. Just recognition, like something that had been missing for 6 years, just walked into the room wearing a dark green sweater and slightly imperfect hair. Reed said something quietly to the man beside him. Then he crossed the room toward us with the unhurried certainty of someone who had been waiting a very long time and had decided waiting was finished. He stopped 3 feet away. He looked at Jasper, then at me, then at Jasper again. Hi, Jasper said cheerfully. I found you on the internet. Reed's composure did something extraordinary. It did not break. It just became something warmer, a shift so subtle most people would have missed it entirely. I know, Reed said quietly. I'm glad you did. Jasper beamed like Reed had just handed him a gold star and a juice box simultaneously. That was my son. 0 warm-up period, 0 social anxiety. Just immediate, unconditional openness that I both admired and found absolutely terrifying in this specific context. Reed crouched down to Jasper's level. Not in the performative way adults sometimes did with children, the exaggerated bending that announced itself. Just quietly, naturally, like it was the obvious thing to do when you wanted to actually talk to someone. I'm Reed, he said. I'm Jasper, Jasper said. I have silver eyes like you. Did you know that silver eyes are a dominant genetic trait in the Caldwell bloodline? I read that on the internet too. Reed blinked. You read genetic trait research. I read everything, Jasper said pleasantly. Daddy says I have no filter and too much access to the library database. Reed looked up at me, just briefly. Something quiet and warm moved through his expression. He's not wrong, I said. Reed stood. We looked at each other across approximately 3 feet of Civic Center floor and 6 years of accumulated silence. And it was the most load-bearing 3 feet I had ever stood across in my life. His scent reached me properly for the first time. Cedar wood and something cooler, like fresh water over stone. Clean, familiar in the way that things you have tried hard to forget become familiar again the moment you stop running. Thank you for coming, he said. Jasper picked the sweater, I said. I want that on record. The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile, the suggestion of one. Noted. Then Declan materialized from the left with the energy of a man who had been watching from across the room and had run out of patience, which tracked completely. Declan had never been the waiting kind. He moved through the crowd with that particular ease of his, the slightly crooked smile already in place. And then he saw Jasper, and the smile went completely still for one honest, unguarded second before it came back softer and less practiced than before. Hey, he said, to both of us. Then his eyes dropped to Jasper and stayed there. Hi, Jasper said. You're Declan. You called my dad this morning. Declan looked at me. He knows everything, doesn't he? He really does, I confirmed. Okay. Declan crouched down beside Reed's previous position with considerably less composure and considerably more emotion sitting openly on his face. Hey, Jasper, I'm Declan. I know, Jasper said. You have the crooked smile. The internet photos didn't lie. Declan laughed. A real one, surprised out of him, and it was the same laugh I remembered from Colorado Springs, the one that had made me forget every sensible thing about myself. I looked at the ceiling briefly. Not helpful, not now. Callum arrived last. He came from the direction of the event organizers, excused himself from a conversation mid-sentence, in the way only people who had never once doubted their right to exit a conversation could manage, and crossed the room with that steady, unhurried walk. He stopped beside his brothers and looked down at Jasper with the focused attention he gave everything. Jasper looked back up at him with matching intensity. It was, objectively, the most unnerving staring contest I had ever witnessed. You're Callum, Jasper said. You're the oldest. You came to Daddy's library on Thursday. I did, Callum said. Did he let you explain? He's working on it, Callum said, and glanced at me sideways with something that was almost humor. Good, Jasper said, in with the gravity of a small judge delivering a verdict. You should explain. Daddy doesn't like unsolved things. He reorganizes when he's stressed. He reorganized our whole apartment when I was 3. Jasper, I said, it's true. It's private. Diana told me it's healthy to be open about our emotional patterns. Diana's not here right now. Jasper shrugged philosophically and accepted a glass of apple juice from a passing server with the ease of someone entirely comfortable at formal events, which he absolutely should not have been at 5 years old. I watched him and felt the specific fond exasperation that had been the dominant emotional weather of my life since his birth. Then Declan straightened up beside me and said quietly enough that only I could hear it, He's incredible. Elliot, my chest did the complicated thing again. I know. You did that. You raised that. He paused. You did it alone. I had help. Marcus, Diana, a truly excellent pediatrician. You know what I mean. I did know, and I did not have a sassy response for it because it landed somewhere too honest for deflection. I had raised Jasper alone by choice, my choice, made in a panicked Colorado Springs morning, and it had been hard in ways I had not let myself fully account for until just this moment, standing in a warm civic center, watching my son charm 3 alpha kings like he had been preparing for this his entire short life, which as it turned out, he had. It was Callum who said it. Of course it was Callum. There's something we need to tell you, he said, low, careful. He's positioned so that the noise of the room covered us from any direction. The thing I couldn't tell you Thursday. I looked at him. My power was already humming, responding to the tension coming off all 3 of them simultaneously, a frequency I felt in my back teeth. Tell me, I said. Callum looked at his brothers once. Something passed between the 3 of them, the wordless sibling shorthand of people who had spent their entire lives reading each other. Then he looked at me. Jasper isn't just our son biologically, he said. He was registered. 6 years ago, the night you left, our PAC physician filed a biological claim record. It's a legal document in PAC law. It names Jasper as a Caldwell heir. The string quartet played something light and pleasant in the corner. We didn't file it to trap you, Declan said quickly. Amber, we filed it to protect him. If anything ever happened to you, if you were ever in danger, he would have immediate Caldwell protection. Full resources, no questions asked. We should have told you, Reed said. We know that. I stood very still. You registered my son, I said, without telling me. To protect him, Callum said, without telling me. The warmth of the last hour drained out of the room so completely and so fast that I felt the temperature change in my own chest. Elliot, do not, I said quietly. Quietly enough that Jasper, 3 feet away enthusiastically describing library cataloging systems to a bewildered event volunteer, did not look up. Do not finish that sentence right now. Nobody finished anything. The string quartet moved into something slower in the corner. Jasper was still talking to the event volunteer about the Dewey Decimal System with the focused enthusiasm of someone who had found a captive audience and intended to use it fully. The room moved around us, warm and indifferent, completely unaware that I was standing in the middle of it doing careful, controlled breathing like a man diffusing something. I turned slightly away from all three of them, not walking away, just giving myself 6 inches of directional space that was mine. My power was humming loud enough now that I could feel it pressing against the inside of my palms. The emotional output coming off Callum, Declan, and Reed simultaneously was a lot. Guilt from all three, layered differently. Declan's was loud and immediate, sitting right on the surface. Reed's was older, quieter, the kind that had been carried so long it had worn grooves. Callum's was the kind that had been converted into action, the way some people responded to guilt by doing things, fixing things, filing legal documents at midnight to protect a child they had never met. That last part was the problem. That last part was the reason I could not simply be furious and uncomplicated about this. How long have you known about the registration? I asked. Still turned slightly away, still quiet. Since it was filed, Callum said. Which was when exactly? 3 weeks after Colorado Springs. I absorbed that. 3 weeks. Jasper had not even been a confirmed pregnancy 3 weeks after Colorado Springs. I had not taken a test until 4 weeks out, when alone in a CVS bathroom in Hartford with my hands shaking and my power going haywire off the plastic packaging. You filed a protection claim for a child you didn't even know existed yet, I said. We knew the possibility existed, Reed said. PAC law allows a protective pre-registration within 90 days of a potential bonding event. Our attorney advised it as a precaution. Your attorney, I said. Hargrove. Yes. I almost laughed. Hargrove Legal, the same firm whose message I had misread, the same attorney who had been trying to cancel one arrangement and had quietly filed another one without any of us knowing what the other hand was doing. The specific irony of that sat in my chest like a stone. I turned back around, and all three of them were watching me with the careful attention of people who understood they were not owed a particular response and were waiting for whatever came honestly. That was the thing about the three of them together that had undone me 6 years ago and was threatening to undo me again right now. Individually, they were formidable. Together, they had this quality of complete presence, like standing in the center of something that had decided you were worth its full attention. And it was overwhelming in a way I had spent 6 years reminding myself was not the same thing as being safe. I need air, I said. Okay, Declan said immediately. I am going to take Jasper outside for 10 minutes. I am going to stand on the sidewalk and breathe like a functional adult. And then I am going to come back in here and we are going to have a real conversation about what happens next. Not about forgiveness, not about feelings, about logistics and choices and what is actually best for Jasper. I looked at each of them in turn. Are we clear? Clear, Callum said. Reed nodded. Declan said yes, with such immediate sincerity that it almost disarmed me. Almost. I collected Jasper from the volunteer, who looked genuinely relieved, and walked us both outside through the side exit onto the Civic Center's front steps. The November air hit me like a reset button, cold and clean and honest, smelling like wet concrete and distant car exhaust and nothing complicated at all. Jasper stood beside me and looked up at the sky. Are you okay? Hey, Daddy? I'm thinking. Is it the reorganizing kind of thinking or the regular kind? The regular kind. Okay. He slipped his hand into mine without being asked. Just settled it there. Small and warm and certain. They seem nice. They are complicated, I said. Can't something be both? I looked down at him. This child. This specific, extraordinary, exhausting child who had his father's silver eyes and somehow also had more wisdom per square inch than anyone I had ever met. Yes, I said. Something can absolutely be both. I liked Reed, he said thoughtfully. He listened like he was actually listening, not the polite kind of listening, the real kind. He was not wrong. Reed had that quality, the kind of attention that did not multitask. I like Declan's laugh, Jasper continued, when it sounds like yours when something actually surprises you. I did not have a response to that. And Callum is scary, but not mean scary, Jasper added. More like the kind of scary that happens because he cares too much and doesn't know what to do with it. I stared at my 5-year-old. Where did you get that from? He shrugged. Ms. Renee says I'm emotionally intuitive. Ms. Renee needs to stop giving you vocabulary. He leaned against my arm, unbothered. We stood there for a moment on the steps, the city moving around us, and I let myself feel the full weight of the day without managing it or filing it or reorganizing it into something more comfortable. The truth was this. The registration was a violation of my autonomy. It was a decision made about my son without my knowledge, and that was not something I could simply absorb and move past in an afternoon. But the intention behind it was not malice. It was 3 men who had woken up one morning to find me gone, who had spent 6 years sitting on the edge of reaching out and choosing restraint because they thought that was what I needed, who had filed a piece of paper in the middle of the night because the alternative was doing nothing at all. It did not make it right, but it made it human. I pressed my thumb against my own palm. No object, no impression, just the habit of it, the self-grounding technique my therapist had given me 3 years ago for moments when my power and my emotions got loud at the same time. What do you actually want, Elliot? Not what is safe, not what is small. What do you want? The answer came quietly, the way real answers usually did. Not in a dramatic rush, but in a simple settling, like something that had been waiting patiently for permission to be acknowledged. I wanted Jasper to know where his silver eyes came from. I wanted to stop carrying the Colorado Springs secret like it was mine alone to hold. And somewhere underneath the 6 years, in the walls, and the careful smallness, I wanted to stop pretending that one night had meant nothing when my power had told me from the first moment I touched anything of theirs that it had meant everything. I squeezed Jasper's hand. 10 more minutes, I said, and then we go back in. Jasper looked up at me with those silver eyes and smiled. I already knew that. Of course you did, I said. You know everything. I really do, he agreed pleasantly, and I laughed despite myself. Properly, unexpectedly, the kind that came from somewhere real. Then I straightened up, adjusted Jasper's collar, and turned back toward the door. They were waiting just inside the entrance, not hovering, not positioned strategically the way powerful people sometimes position themselves to communicate authority. Just standing together near the wall, the 3 of them, with the particular quality of men who had decided that whatever came through that door was worth waiting for and were prepared to accept it either way. Reed saw us first. Again. I was starting to think that was just his thing. Jasper walked ahead of me with the confidence of someone who had already resolved his personal feelings about the situation and was ready to move forward, which honestly I envied. And I walked behind him and met Callum's eyes across the room and held them for a moment before I reached the 3 of them. Okay, I said, I need to say something first, before anything else gets decided or discussed or legally documented without my knowledge. Callum accepted that with a single nod. I took a breath. 6 years ago, I touched your phone, I said to him directly. I read the message from Hargrove, and I made a decision in about 45 seconds, based on one sentence without context. That was my choice. I own it. I paused. But I also saw something else on that phone before I put it down. A photo. The 3 of you at what looked like a pack formal event, and standing beside you was an Omega I recognized. Liam Ashworth, my ex, the one I had left 8 months before Colorado Springs. The air between us shifted. When he was wearing a formal bonding sash, I said, in the photo. Silence. We knew Liam, Declan said carefully. He ran in packed social circles. We had met him at events. I know, I saw that. I kept my voice steady. What I also saw, because my power is inconvenient and thorough, was the emotion on that photo. It came off the screen like heat. Possessiveness. Want. I looked at Declan specifically. From you. Declan went very still, and there it was. The last piece. The thing I had carried alongside the misread message. The one that had made leaving feel not just necessary but final. Not just a misunderstanding to potentially clarify, but a confirmation of something I had told myself I already knew. That I was temporary. That there was someone else. That one night with an Omega who could read the histories of objects was not going to compete with years of established pack social architecture. He was my ex, I said, and I thought you wanted him. So I left. Declan closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they were doing something complicated and honest. Liam pursued a formal interest with our pack through social channels. I will not pretend I was not briefly interested. That was 2 years before Colorado Springs. He held my gaze. By the time we met you, Elliot, that interest was finished. Completely. What you read off that photo was old. It was history sitting on a saved image, not current feeling. I didn't know that. I know you didn't. And I should have told you about Liam myself before any of it. He exhaled. That's on me. That one is entirely on me, and I am sorry. The sincerity of it landed without performance. No speeches, no carefully constructed defense. Just Declan, looking at me with his crooked smile completely absent for once, telling the truth at the cost of looking bad. My power was quiet, completely unusually quiet, which was its own kind of answer. So, I said slowly, I left because of a message I misread and an emotion I correctly read, but incorrectly dated. Yes, Callum said, and you didn't come after me because you thought I had chosen to leave. Yes, Reed said, and you filed a legal protection document for our son in the middle of all that confusion because you were scared and you did not know what else to do. Yes, all three of them said, why in the specific unified way that only people who had been finishing each other's sentences their entire lives could manage. I looked at the ceiling. We are, I said to no one in particular, a collection of incredibly intelligent people who made an extraordinary number of avoidable mistakes. Jasper, who had been listening to this entire exchange with the focused attention of someone watching a very important documentary, patted my hand. It's okay, Daddy. Ms. Renee says communication is a skill you have to practice. Declan made a sound that was almost certainly a suppressed laugh. Callum pressed 2 fingers briefly to his mouth. Reed looked at Jasper with that quiet, warm expression that had been dismantling me steadily since the moment he walked across the Civic Center floor. And I said, quietly and finally and honestly, Ari, I missed you, all 3 of you. I spent 6 years not letting myself say that, and I am saying it now. Nobody moved for a breath. Then Declan crossed the space between us and put his arms around me with the careful deliberateness of someone who understood they were not owed this and was grateful for it anyway. His scent hit me properly for the first time in 6 years, and my power did not give me history or images or emotion. It just went warm and still, the way it only ever did when I was somewhere I was supposed to be. I let myself hold on. Reed's hand found my shoulder, steady and quiet, the way he did everything. Callum did not hug me. That was not Callum, but he stepped close enough that his arm pressed against mine and stayed there, solid and certain. And that was its own language, and I understood it completely. Jasper made a sound of deep personal satisfaction. Okay, I'm going to get more apple juice, he announced, and walked away with the energy of someone whose work was done. I laughed into Declan's shoulder. A real one, the surprised kind. He planned this, Declan said. Your 5-year-old planned this entire thing. He absolutely did, I said. I like him enormously, Reed said from behind me. He know, I said. He already knows. We stood there in the warm noise of the Civic Center, the 4 of us in our particular orbit, and I felt the specific quality of something that had been broken for a long time, carefully, imperfectly, honestly beginning to heal. Not fixed, not finished. Nothing this real was ever finished in an afternoon, but beginning. Later, when the event was winding down and Jasper had fallen asleep in Reed's arms with the boneless confidence of a child who had decided where he belonged and settled in accordingly, Callum stood beside me near the window, looking out at the Hartford evening. What happens now? He asked. I thought about small, about the careful, contained life I had built with such deliberate effort. I thought about what Marcus had said. The life you built might have been the consolation prize and not the actual story. I thought about Jasper's silver eyes and Reed's quiet recognition, and Declan's real laugh, and Callum's steady, deliberate arm pressed against mine like a promise that did not need words. Now we do it right, I said. Slowly, honestly. No more decisions made without everyone in the room. Callum was quiet for a moment. Then, Ick, that's fair. It's more than fair. It's the only way this works. He looked at me sideways, that almost humor quality in his silver eyes. You're going to be difficult, aren't you? Callum, I said pleasantly, I am a psychometric omega who raised your son alone in Hartford for 6 years on library archivist pay and sheer stubbornness. Difficult does not begin to cover it. His mouth did the thing, the almost smile that I had cataloged 6 years ago and apparently never deleted. Good, he said quietly. We could use difficult. Across the room, Declan was showing Jasper something on his phone, both of them laughing at something I could not hear. Reed held Jasper's sleeping weight with one arm and caught my eye over the distance between us. He did not smile. He did not need to. I pressed my palm flat against the windowsill. Must cold glass and old wood. The impression that came back was simple and immediate. Hundreds of people standing at this window over decades, looking out at the same city, feeling the same thing, named differently by each of them, but fundamentally identical. The feeling of being exactly where you were supposed to be. I lifted my hand, looked out at Hartford, lit up and alive in the early evening, and for the first time in 6 years, I did not feel small. I felt like the actual story had just begun. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed it, you'll definitely love the next one. It's even crazier and more intriguing than you can imagine. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. The next story drops soon.